welcome to Let's Play Gran Turismo 3, episode 70. Alright, so let's move on to our third car type event in the professional league, which is the MR Challenge. And many of you would predict me to be using the Ford GT40, which is probably the obvious choice, and well, the truth is, I'm not going to do that because unfortunately it's a car I do not have in my garage. And I'm just going to check to see which of these cars I've not driven yet. Driven most of these, but I think the car I'm going to use as well, I want to use the Honda NSX Type S. So that's exactly what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the Honda. And obviously, I'm going to do the tuning because obviously that's mandatory for the professional league, and I'm also going to just do the usual shit with the suspension and brakes, and also going to put on a stage 2 tuning engine because I would imagine they probably have about 450 horses, or somewhere over 400 methinks. And just put on the stage 2 engine, and I'm also going to put on the port polish, just so I can actually remain competitive. And I'm pretty sure this car does not have turbo. No, it doesn't. So cannot be fitted with any turbo tuning, and I'm not going to mess around. I'm just going to put on the super slicks because I need those, and I'm also just going to do the first 2 stages of weight reduction because both of those are mandatory. And let's now move onwards to the MR Challenge. So another 3 race event, obviously a single race event, going to Tri-Mountain, Laguna Seca and midfield reverse, and 20 grand if we can win each of these races. And by now you will have probably figured there is a pattern going on here, obviously. And it says here, the challenge for all midship engine, rear wheel drive configure machines to win. And obviously it shows a Honda NSX on the cover of the event, so I figured, yeah, it was probably necessary for me to use the Honda NSX, so that's exactly what I'm using. Okay, so I decided to reset the game because I've discovered I am not going to beat the GT40s with the tuning I currently have, because those things are fucking powerful up front, from what I can make out. And well, I decided instead of just going through all the fucking trial and tribulation to try and make this thing competitive, I was just saying to myself, fuck it, I'm just gonna do all the fucking tuning I can to this thing just to keep up with them. Because I was 6 seconds off the pace, and I pretty much need all the tuning I can put on this thing. And well, I don't think I need a drivetrain, because I don't think I need to head over to the drivetrain department for anything important, except for maybe a drive shaft, which is probably what I will get. Yeah, let's put on the drive shaft and we'll see what happens. And I cannot fit it. Okay. But it's fine, because I have all the other tuning I need. And out of curiosity of my car still being off the pace, I'm also going to give this thing an oil change. And so, here we go for attempt number 2 of race 1 in the MR Challenge. And where I am pretty certain we are going to have some GT40s for this event. And, oh okay, we only have one GT40. But anyways, I reset the game. I did pretty much all the tuning I could do to this thing. except for putting on the engine balancing, because, well, I don't think I need that. And yeah, let's try this again. Hopefully this time my car will be more competitive than it was in the previous attempt, because I need that race actually. And hopefully this time, since it is only really one GT40 I'm up against, hopefully it will not be as much of a problem as competing against two GT40s. I've basically done all the physical tuning I can do to this thing. This game really does know how to fuck with me in terms of the prize cars I choose to win, even though obviously there was one event in the Amateur League where I could win the GT40, but obviously in the end, because I wanted to be cheap, I chose to win the Honda NSX because I was stubborn. And officially, I decided for this I was going to use a Honda NSX, you know, choosing of course to be transcendent over everyone else. I'm driving a much faster race car than I was in the previous event now, and also furthermore, I'm a lot more competitive now. So, I decided I wasn't going to do the trial and error just to try and beat the GT40. I just decided to do a reset and then just basically try this again, except this time using a much more handling car in terms of overall acceleration, or at least a quicker car than I was using before. Because previously I was nowhere near the GT40s, and right now I can actually say I am competitive for once in this race. And even though I do already have some wear on the right rear tyre, it's all good because this is all part of the plan. Except for not hitting the rock, which is the one thing I shouldn't have done. But whatever, it's fine. I am proving myself. I am also proving myself to running hard up front with the GT40. I've literally put on pretty much all the engine tuning I can put on this thing, just to keep up with the 60s Le Mans winner, which is essentially what this thing is. Considering the GT40 did of course win the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the mid-60s, narrowly beating out the Ferrari 330 P4s after all of them had pretty much either broken down or wrecked. The GT40 beat those cars, and furthermore it also achieved a 1-2-3 finish. Although it is a tragic story on how that was also the only time Ken Miles actually got to compete in the Grand Prix of Endurance, because obviously Ken Miles would sadly lose his life whilst testing a GT40 prototype at Riverside, which obviously isn't a circuit anymore, but at the Riverside International Raceway. Oh, both of us are sliding. I'm sliding down the inside of the GT40, and ironically, I do of course manage to take the lead. But of course, Ken Miles unfortunately would sadly perish whilst testing one of the newer GT40 prototypes. The cause of the crash was and still is unofficial, but obviously they're suspecting it must have been a mistake that caused the crash somewhere, unless it was a mechanical fault somewhere. I couldn't tell you what the cause of the crash was, but effectively regardless of what happened, Ken Miles would sadly perish in that crash at Riverside, which unfortunately is another circuit that doesn't exist anymore, but a circuit of course that does not exist anymore, and with the GT40s after Ken Miles had perished on that fateful day, the GT40 eventually went onwards to win the Grand Prix of Endurance, in other words the 24 Hours of Le Mans, precisely 3 more times consecutively. As of which, in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the GT40 had achieved winning there for 4 successive years in a row. Even though its winning streak was eventually stopped in 1970 by the Porsche 917, which ironically enough was also a car driven by Steve McQueen, and oddly enough, in many cases, it's probably my other favourite race car from the 20th century, because by God, I love both of those cars in my honest opinion. And also my eyes are burning, probably because I haven't been blinking. Anyways, I lead the GT40 here at Trial Mountain after a reset, because yeah, I figured that's what I would do, and ultimately we are almost halfway through this race. And officially I'm starting to slowly build up a margin to the GT40, so with some additional engine tuning to this thing, I can now say I am more than competitive enough to ultimately win this race. Alright, so the gap is now virtually 3 seconds to the GT40. I'm pretty certain, to say the least, that I will manage to hopefully win this race, as which, obviously, since I am driving a much more competitive race car than I was on my previous attempt, officially I can now say that ultimately, even though this car still tends to tailfish through certain areas, obviously this is a much less ill-handling race car than the Cobra was. I can definitely tell you that much, because this car is a lot more agile. It feels as dainty as a dandelion seed, and oddly enough, this thing, in comparison to the Cobra, is completely sophisticated. Even though obviously the Cobra is better than the NSX, and personally, overall, in terms of my favourite Japanese sports cars, I do prefer the Mazda RX-7 FD over this one, even though the NSX is definitely ranked as being a close second. And I do mean the original Honda NSX, I don't mean the new one. Because the new one is okay to look at. As a race car, that thing is awesome, but as a normal road car, not so much. And I do apologise to those of you who do like the updated version of the NSX better, but unfortunately, I always say the original ones are the best. But yeah, anyways. Going back, of course, to the subject. On Ford winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans, officially, it was, of course, the Porsche 917 that notably ended Ford's 4-year winning streak at the Grand Prix of Endurance, because the Porsche 917 notably won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1970, and I think it did the same thing again in 71. And of course, the reason why I consider the Porsche 917 to be my second favourite classic race car of all, the reason why I notably consider the Porsche 917 to be my other favourite race car from the 20th century is officially because, well, that thing was officially because the 917 was driven by Steve McQueen. I mean, literally, of all the fucking people in the world, they got Steve McQueen to drive that thing. And that's another reason why it is one of my personal favourites, because Steve McQueen was notably nicknamed the King of Cool at the time, and there were many good reasons on why exactly Steve McQueen was so astonishing as an actor, because that's just the way his personality was. I mean, they nicknamed Steve McQueen the King of Cool for a good reason, and it wasn't just because of the cars he drove, but it was also because of how many films he starred in. They notably saw him using both cars and bikes. Of course, Steve McQueen mainly had a love affair for bikes. Probably about as much as he had a love affair for Alan Moore, as of which they did of course star in quite a few films together overall. But of course, the one thing that Terence Steve McQueen, which is his full name, loved the most was bikes. It was literally the one thing he had more of a passion for than cars. Because even though Steve had a love affair for cars as well, apparent as it might be, I also learned that was ultimately what officially let him down. And then when he moved back over to bikes, he was basically back where he called home. Just basically riding bikes in movies, and basically doing that up to the date of his untimely death in 1980, where sadly of course Steve had died at only the age of 50 from a cardiac arrest. Considering the man himself was only 50 years old when he died, and I'm pretty certain for a man himself who was notably the same age as Clint Eastwood, I'm pretty certain he would have probably gone on to star in many more successful films in the future, had it not, of course, been for his untimely death in the early 80s. Considering the man himself was only 50 years old. Anyways, whilst I'm on the Steve McQueen subject, we are now on the final lap here at Trial Mountain. And of course, I am now 11.7 seconds clear of the GT40. So I think it's clear to say I definitely benefited from putting on the additional engine tuning, and overall, in hindsight, this has actually been a pretty good race in my honest opinion. Certainly not a farcical race until later on, because obviously tyre wear kicked in for the GT40, but fortunately, however, it was only one GT40 I had to deal with, and since I did that, officially, once I managed to take the lead, I basically just went onwards to pretty much dominate the rest of this event, and that's exactly what I have done. And I also set a new best lap time in the process. Anyways, I win. So the GT40 finishes second ahead of the Zonda, then it's the Roof 3400S in fourth, and then at the back we have the two Lotus Esprits. Let's now wait for everybody else to finish. Okay, everyone has managed to finish, and as of which, both myself, the GT40 and the Pagani Zonda were basically streaks ahead of the 3400S, and meanwhile for the two Lotus Esprits, they were pretty much nowhere in that race. So, 20 grand this time for winning this race, and officially... Actually, no, I won't save this one. But I will save the next one, I think. So, second race, and it takes place at Laguna Seca. Okay, it is pretty clear that I need some more acceleration if I'm going to win this race, because god damn it, that fucking GT40 is invincible. Or it literally feels invincible around that circuit, so I'm going to put on the racing transmission just so I can get more acceleration, and I think for this I really don't have any other choice. I'm going to put on the engine balancing as well, because I literally need all the power I can get if I'm going to win this, and well, just because I want to, I'm also going to put on the final stage of weight reduction, because fuck it. Okay, let's try this again, and hopefully this time I will have a stronger shot of winning, because that GT40 is a fucking beast of an opponent. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all I really need to do. Anyways, I'm trying this again because obviously I pretty much need all the power I can get if I'm going to beat the GT40. And fortunately, for me at least, the GT40 is not starting on the pole, so it does not have as much of an advantage this time. And oh, he runs wide. The GT40 has spun at the first corner, and I think that has effectively handed the race lead over to me as a result of that spin. And he is stationary. I did not think the GT40 was going to spin, as of which I did of course put on the fully customizable transmission, so I can actually compete for the race win this time in comparison to the previous attempt. And as I expected, these AI are making mistakes here, of course, at Laguna Seca. But the GT40, of all people, I did not expect was going to spin on the first lap here at Laguna Seca in literally the first corner. I did not expect that shit to happen. But surprisingly, it actually did. And the GT40 is quickly closing in from that mistake, so he has got to be fast. And I am hopeful, to say the least, that I will manage to take the lead away from the Pagani Zonda before the GT40 does manage to catch up to the leaders again. And he does not do any such mistake this time. I am now leading here at Laguna Seca, and I'm suspecting it is only a matter of time before the GT40 does catch up to me, and then when he does, obviously, that is probably when I am going to be in trouble. Although, I certainly got lucky with the GT40 not starting on the pole on this attempt compared to the previous attempt, because in that race he was just basically dominating the rest of the field. I basically needed to put all of the fucking tuning I could get on this thing just to win it. And that is literally what I have done this time. And yep, the GT40 has definitely caught up to the rest of the pack, and it's only a matter of time before he comes back to fight for the lead. I did not expect him to spin at the hairpin on the first lap, so I definitely got lucky there. And surprisingly, as well as that, I also managed to take the lead away from the Bugatti Zonda. And the gap is now 2.7 seconds. I basically had to put as much money as I could put into this thing, and it looks as though this time I might be able to win this event. It looks as though the GT40 has now cleared the rest of the pack. I am not repeating the same mistake I made on the previous attempt when I spun at corkscrew. I have a lot more acceleration this time since I put on the racing transmission. Since obviously the GT40 was basically the dominator on the previous attempt. And it's very much a matter of time before he starts to compete against me for the race lead, because he has now cleared the rest of the pack, and he is slowly catching up to both myself and the Zonda after 3 laps here at Laguna Seca. He is slowly catching up to both of us, but at the very least I can definitely say, as I hear a helicopter going up above my house, but at the very least, by now, I can say that I am definitely in a good position to hopefully win the race, as long as the GT40 does not dent my progress. The GT40 has definitely made up for that mistake. He has not repeated that mistake ever since. I can tell when he's angry because he has basically just separated himself from the rest of the field, and it's only a matter of time before he catches up to both myself and the Bugatti Zonda. Meanwhile, I am currently on pace with the GT40 since I did put on the racing transmission. The only reason I figured that was necessary was because I needed more acceleration if I was going to compete with the GT40. That's exactly what I've done, and already I can say for sure that officially at the moment I am in more or less a comfortable enough position to hold on for the race win, basically. So the Zonda is starting to catch up slightly through that second sector, as of which we are heading through corkscrew once again. And the GT40 has really closed in on these last couple of laps. He is clearly going for the win, but obviously I have to basically defend as hard as I can if I'm going to win this race, because I know for sure the GT40 is absolutely going to thrash my ass by the time he takes second place. And as it might be, he has now taken second place. So the GT40, as I expected, he is back in the fight. And it is not going to be long before he closes in on me, because his car clearly has more acceleration through the corners than mine does. Even though at the moment I am managing to steadily build on my lead, probably because I'm making less mistakes than the AI are currently doing. I'm making minor mistakes, but I'm not making as many mistakes as the AI are currently doing, and yep, that interval has definitely shrunken. I'm suspecting this is very much going to be like the first race of the FR Challenge, where the Tuscan is basically keeping up with me and not letting me separate myself from the rest of the field. I think it's fair to say that by the time he catches me and overtakes me, he probably is going to do that very soon, I suspect. I'm really going to have to push hard on this thing if I'm going to win this race, because the GT40 is literally flying at the moment. 6.5 seconds. Okay, I really need to concentrate on this if I'm going to win it, because he'll inevitably catch up and pass me if I don't concentrate. Jesus Christ. I literally thought for sure I was going to repeat the mistake I made previously. Fortunately, however, I did not. To go. Must defend from the GT40. He shall not pass. Quoting Lord of the Rings. You shall not pass. This is intense. And I also set a new best lap time at 3/10. Just keeping it going. So, 8 laps into the books, still got 2 to go. I really cannot afford to bottle this. The GT40 is clearly faster than me on most parts of the lap, as I've established. But at the very least, I'm able to antagonise him by also getting my fair share of equally good corners on the track. The GT40 is definitely not willing to give an inch, as of which I am having to work for this one just to win it, as of which obviously I'm basically trying to defend my lead from the GT40, and I'm now into the high 121s. Anyways, final lap. And it looks as though I might just be able to fend off from the GT40 in this race. He is rapidly closing the gap, but fortunately I am able to get my stronger set of corners, as of which I'm going to anticipate he must have pushed too hard on his tyres up to this point. I really did not expect him to make the mistake that he made on the first lap. That's effectively what probably costed him this race. Fortunately, I have not made any such mistakes, as of which I still need to survive the rest of the lap to prove it. By the time I've done that, I can basically just settle back and relax, basically. Okay, one corner left. Okay. I'm going to hold on for the race win. Thank God. I really had to work for that one. And gap in the end, 6 seconds to the GT40. As a result of him spinning on the first lap, I effectively won that race once I took the lead away from the Zonda. Anyways, let's wait for everyone else to finish. Alright, everyone has finished, and in the end of that titanic battle I had with the GT40, I eventually won by 6 seconds. Then it was the Zonda in third, followed by the two Roof 3400Ss in fourth and fifth, and then at the back, as per usual, it was the Lotus Esprit. Still, thank God, I did not think I was going to pull that off. But surprisingly in the end I did. But still, son of a bitch, that GT40 was quick. It was probably the quickest car out on track, but it was only really a couple of corners where I had the overall advantage. Anyways, final race, and it takes place at midfield reverse, and where I am pretty certain pit stops are probably going to be made, and this time we have two GT40s to contend with. And I'm going to leave everything on as is for this race, because I would imagine, regardless of what happens, the two GT40s are going to be inevitably the quickest cars out on track. As of which I've literally had to spend all the money I could on engine tuning just to keep up with the two GT40s, as of which both of them have now taken second and third places respectively, and oh shit, did not think I was going to save it there, and I'm hopeful to say at the very least they will both make the same mistake as the Zonda by running the high line, and I should not be running the high line, but somehow I still am. And the two GT40s are fighting for second place at the moment, as of which I am of course closing in on these two guys. I'm hopeful in saying the top speed will not be an issue. I'm also hopeful to say at the very least that errors by this AI on this track will hopefully win me this race. The first of the two GT40s is out at the front, and I am close to hitting top speed. Unfortunately, I don't think that'll be too much of a problem. I managed to keep the car on track. The second of the two GT40s has made a mistake. I do manage to take the lead away from the first of the two GT40s, as of which obviously I had to, and I'm hopeful to say at the very least it will probably be errors from this AI that win me this race, without me making the same errors, or not making as many errors as these AI have been making. Oh, bollocks. Well, I probably knew that sooner or later I was going to hit that wall. Although fortunately, however, the impact was not as hard as it could have been. Anyways, I am leading at midfield reverse, and the first of the two GT40s is in second by pretty much 3 seconds, and hopefully if I can avoid making the major mistakes, then I should be able to hopefully win this race like I did the previous time, because the GT40s are definitely some competent opponents in this race, as I learned from Laguna Seca. But I think in the end of that, I got lucky on tyre wear, and that was exactly what officially won me that race. And fortunately for me at least, I did at least manage to overcome the overwhelming odds, and eventually I did of course go onwards to win the race. And the only thing I'm trying to do now is hold in a sneeze, which doubtless I probably won't. Even though I do have a tissue right in front of me on my desk, obviously I'm going to need to do some cleaning up on my desk, because my desk at the moment is a mess, basically. So, 3 laps down and still another 12 to go, basically. And that's okay. And this time, as a result of the mistakes, the Honda has now retaken second position away from the two GT40s as a result of the AI's incompetence around this circuit. It allows me to retake the lead, and in the process I can now say I'm starting to extend my lead. I decided to leave everything as it is because I did, of course, have a feeling that if I didn't, I would basically need to just keep trying and trying until I do eventually manage to win, which obviously is one thing I did not have to do. But I just decided to leave everything as is because I would imagine there are certain circuits where the AI are more capable of adapting to the track surface than I am, which is more or less what I anticipated to be the case. we are now a third of the way through this race, because we are now 5 laps into the final race of the MR Challenge. As of which I forgot to mention, this is of course the final race. And overall, it's actually been pretty boring compared to the previous two, because I'm pretty much building up a lead lap after lap at the moment as a result of me not reprising the mistakes of the AI. In other words, repeating. Which probably is a conspiracy to some, but it's a conspiracy to me. So 11.5 seconds is now the margin to the Zonda. He now retakes the second position away from the GT40, because the Zonda is making less mistakes than the first of the two GT40s. There is quite a titanic tussle going on for first position, as of which I've literally had to spend pretty much all the fucking money I can spend just to make this thing competitive enough to run these two races, as of which obviously all the tuning I have done to this thing so far have been completely necessary, and I could not prevent the thing from spinning. And evidently I knew for sure I was going to spin eventually. But it's fine, because the AI basically do the same thing. I thought for sure I could save it, but then suddenly, just like that, the fucking oversteer had to catch me out and basically just say, no fuck you, you've got to have a spin. And inevitably, that is exactly what happened. Fuck you, oversteer. That's literally what forced me into the spin. And if the fan was not right next to me, I would probably be furious. Can I please stop making these mistakes? It's just becoming synonymous at the moment. Okay, just because I'm leading doesn't mean I get to fuck up as much as the AI are doing. Get your head back in the fucking game. Fucking delinquents. Okay, the GT40 just spun again, because he ran the high line. Okay. I'm now going to put that lap behind me, because officially I do actually need to concentrate on doing everything properly if I'm going to win this race. And I really need to get the lap times back in the books. I really need to concentrate. I really need to concentrate on getting these fucking laps in if I'm going to get this done properly. And the gap is now 3.4 seconds. And he just spun again, as of which that's basically what he's been doing pretty much every lap in this race, and the only reason why I'm still leading this race, basically. But inevitably, I too of course became a victim to that high banked hairpin. I knew it was going to happen eventually, and fortunately at least, me, it's only happened once, and hopefully it will not happen again, and as of which, in reaction to lap 7, I just set a new PB, and I just got damn it. Aha! Fuck you, oversteer. You ain't fucking with me this time. My car might still be running loose, but at the very least, I'm still able to put myself in enough of a secure position to hold on to the race lead. And as of which, the gap, as a result of me reducing the mistakes I've been making on the past 3 laps, has now increased to 10 seconds as a result. Just goes to show how much concentration can do for you. And nope, I am not getting fucked by oversteer this time. Because if the rear axle thinks that, then the rear axle can go fuck itself, basically. Anyways, 10 laps are down, and sorry, 11 laps are now down, going to be down, I should say, and we still have 4 laps to go. Right midfield reverse. Officially, it does look as though I am going to overlap the Lotus Esprit. He is very much a non-competitor for this race, and this is officially where I'm going to successfully overlap the Esprit because he spun up the hairpin. Alright, so 13 seconds is now the interval to the GT40, as of which I have now overlapped the Esprit, and it's taken me 12 laps to do so, or 11 laps to do so, almost 12, and officially I would say victory is as good as mine. So 3 laps to go, still have I still have to survive these last 3 laps before I can officially be declared the race winner. Once I've done that officially, that is probably when I will manage to officially put myself in the position I need to be. And will I overlap the Roof 3400S? Probably not. Am I still going to try and overlap him anyway? Because evidently I have one of the quickest cars out on track, and officially, there are now 2 laps to go. We're at midfield reverse. In spite of me making two mistakes on lap 7, I eventually managed to quickly get over that. I increased my aggression and I also increased my concentration, and as a result I am now pretty much a tearaway streak ahead of the GT40. So a tearaway streak ahead of the GT40, and officially I am pretty certain that with this race, unlike Laguna Seca, I was not overruled by the terrorism that was the GT40. And yes, I am dubbing that as being terrorism because of how fast he was in those final couple of laps. Anyways, final lap. This is midfield, that was Laguna Seca, and already I just fucked up the start of the lap because I had to. And it doesn't matter because the first of the 2 GT40s has now come into the pits. I also fucked up the exit of the first corner, which is something that I have done before. This could be my opportunity where I overlap the roof and darting down the inside but also sliding on the exit. The roof 3400S is right in front of me and keeping intact with him at the present time. I slot down the inside, no contact was made. Fortunately, as we head through the final corner, holding on to my interval, 20 seconds is now the margin to the GT40, and officially, in spite of me having trouble at Laguna Seca, I win at midfield reverse, by default of the AI just pretty much being more terrible than me. And I overlapped 2 cars in that race, both the Roof and the Lotus Esprit. Let's now wait for everybody else to finish. Alright, so once I took the lead in that race I pretty much dominated. So the white GT40 finished in 2nd, the Zonda was 3rd, then it was the red GT40 as a result of him pitting on the final lap, along with the Lotus Esprit. And in that race I overlapped 2 cars, as of which I overlapped the Roof 3400S and I also overlapped the only Lotus Esprit. Although, fortunately at least, the Zonda was able to split the GT40 podium streak, or at least split their dominance in this event. And yeah, anyways, let's move on to the prize car before I start rambling. And the car we won is... Yo, we got the Tommy Kyra from this event. I'm pretty sure this car is a 4-wheel drive, but whatever. This is our prize car from the Professional MR Challenge. And unfortunately, it's not going to be the car I'll use for the 4-wheel drive challenge, unfortunately. And so, we are 1% away from achieving 3/4 of the overall completion in this game. And my win ratio is still stabilised. So, heading up here, and this is our prize car. And yep, just as I correctly predicted, this is a 4-wheel drive. But officially, this is the car we win from the Professional MR Challenge. And I have got to be honest, this thing actually looks okay in silver. I mean, usually I would have expected myself to win this thing in red, but apparently not. But yeah, this thing's okay in my honest opinion, even though I probably won't use it, unless it's for a clean-up race somewhere. Well, I'll have to think about it, but yeah. Anyways, that's our prize car from the Professional MR Challenge, and next time we shall be moving onwards to the 4-wheel drive challenge. So stay tuned for more of the third Gran Turismo.